And that's kind of where we are now. We've had all the comments out there, all the stickers. We've stuck stickers on everything. We have looked at lots of different aspects of this city, everything from transportation to how retail develops to how neighborhoods develop. We've looked at all that, and everybody started having input. Now we're going to start putting it together. So thank you for being part of this process. Thank you for making this where this is the city of the citizens of the city of Huntsville's plan, and we look forward to rolling this out over the next year as we start to go forward. And now I'd like to introduce to you our long-range urban planner, Dennis Madsen, who is the person who has been putting all this together and doing everything. And he has really has done yeoman's work to make sure that this works. He has sat down in more coffee shops and more living rooms and more little meeting places than anybody I know. And over the last year, how many people do you think you've met with, Dennis?
If you include the big meetings, several thousand.
So he's met with 190,000 people out of 189,000 that are in the city of Huntsville. But he's met with people time and time again and met so that we can all have input into this. And Dennis, thank you for doing this. And this is your show. Thank you for doing everything.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you all again for coming out tonight. Again, my name is Dennis Madsen. I'm the manager of urban and long-range planning. If you've been to any of these before, we've probably met. We've been going on this. This is a day past the year anniversary of our kickoff meeting last year, where we really talked about what we were going to do in terms of the big picture, that we were going to undertake this comprehensive planning effort for the city of Huntsville, something that hadn't been done in decades, and that I think a lot of folks in the community really recognized a need for. So to give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to try and keep it kind of quick and get you to some little kind of planning exercises afterwards. I'm going to go quickly over sort of the year in review. What that's going to focus on a lot of is the feedback, what we heard from folks. It really is, people have used the term drinking from a fire hose. We've got so many comments online, in person, and comment cards. Just sorting through all of it was a challenge, but it's been this fantastic response, and that's going to be a good bit of kind of our discussion tonight. Then we took all of that and we really kind of broke it down into some key issues that are going to drive the discussion in the next phase of the big picture effort. There's one especially key point, that's the market and economy. That really kind of drives and forms a foundation for a lot of where we're going to go in the future. So Lakey Boyd, who is a contractor for us, who's a specialist in the market analysis and looking at our economy and our economic performance, she's going to come up and talk to you a little bit about how, what some of the challenges are for the future of our economy, and then I'll come and wrap it up a little bit and talk you through what are the next steps going forward. And the mayor said this when we kicked it off a year ago, and said, if you're here to see a plan unveiled, you're going to be disappointed, because that night we did not have one. And I know a year has passed. We still do not have one. However, that is the idea. The idea is that we continue to have this discussion. This past year has really been going out to the community, talking about what are the issues, what are the challenges facing us. This next year is going to be focused on, okay, we know the issues, we have an idea of what the hurdles we need to overcome. What are we actually going to do about it? While we did a lot of kind of planning analysis internally, we studied a lot of the demographics, we studied our land use, we looked at how our transportation network was performing. One of the biggest pieces of this first year has been that public participation. It's probably taken up the bulk of my time, of the rest of the planners on our floor's time. This has really been an outreach-based effort. We really wanted to make sure we hit as many people. I don't think we got quite all 190,000 folks in Huntsville, mainly because there's a few repeat offenders in here that I can't count twice. But we want to make sure we get a blanket approach, get as many folks heard or feeling like they had the opportunity to share their opinion as possible. And we used a lot of different formats. We had the public kickoff last year. We had a speaker series. We brought a few more speakers. We're probably going to bring some more as well, just to kind of talk about certain topical issues, things that are very appropriate to Huntsville, talk about trends and strategies in different areas. We've done kiosk events where we've gone out to neighborhood meetings or festivals, just to listen to folks and talk about what they feel like is their vision for the future. We've had multiple citizens academies, these kind of large events where we dived into things like transportation and aging in place. We also did a lot of small scale meetings. We met, as the mayor mentioned, I've had more coffee in the last year than I think I had my previous 44 years combined. That's just a good way to kind of sit down with a few people at a time and just get that kind of one-on-one or two-on-one idea of what are people's concerns and what do other folks think Huntsville needs to look like in the coming decades. We also had some very specific focus groups on things like transportation and greenways. We've gotten, some of those have kind of stalled a little because we actually found that we didn't have a whole lot to talk about in them, but some of them, like the greenways and the transportation pieces, have really pushed forward. We've gotten a lot of input and feedback from those. The one that is probably running most of me and my peers ragged is the Book a Planner. We have gone out to community associations, we've gone out to schools, we've gone out to corporations. We even had a Book a Planner event with a Boy Scout troop, which was actually probably one of the most fun. But that is just another way that we can get out and hear the message, and we've been doing that for over a year. We've also got an advisory team of folks who kind of helping us screen some of the things, the strategies that we're looking at. And we've also tried to do things very digitally. This is Huntsville, after all. I hope that you all have been to the website, bigpicturehuntsville.com. I hope you all, even if you haven't, will nod and pretend that you have. We also have a map app that as you're wandering around the city, if you see an area that you want to know a little bit more of, you can actually pull it up on your handheld and find out the demographic information for that area. Based on popular demand, we've actually recently added a Facebook page for the Big Picture. If you look for Big Picture Huntsville on Facebook, hopefully you'll find us. We just had a lot of folks say, a lot of my time is spent on Facebook. A lot of how I book appointments is on Facebook. I wish you guys had a Facebook page, so now we've got a Facebook page. We also work through the city's Twitter account. We have an online message board, Idea Scale, and as well as traditional media. I saw a lot of TV folks here tonight. I really appreciate all the work that they've done through the news media in helping us get this message out and helping you find us so that you can share your ideas with us. Where you can find the website, and that's really going to be a focus going forward, the website will be, it's bigpicturehuntsville.com. You can send us an email at that site. We've even got the hashtag for the Twitter set, and of course, we finally added a Facebook page. I want to highlight the Citizens Academies as one element briefly, just because I want to point out the topics that are on here. 5 topics on there, none of these originated with me or with the planning staff. All right, all of these came from talking with the citizens. When I first moved to Huntsville, Ditto Landing was not even on my radar. I thought, you know what, it's just an old marina, it's a little sort of point of interest. Some folks go down there, occasionally you hang out by the river, but it's not really it's not really anything that the planners need to consider. We found out very quickly how wrong we were, that so many folks in public meetings were like, why don't we do more with our riverfront? Why don't we get engaged there? So we said, all right, we'll take a look at that. Same thing with economic development. Through a lot of our early investigation, we heard people ask, how do we continue to make sure that we attract great businesses and that we attract jobs? Neighborhood disinvestment, that is, we found actually a concern throughout the city. So we had a Citizens Academy on that. On aging in place, that was one we didn't consider early on either, but we heard from so many folks that the idea that they wanted to stay in Huntsville, that they wanted to stay in their neighborhoods, but as they aged, they felt like they weren't going to be able to. So we did a Citizens Academy on that. And the future of transportation, I think everything begins and ends with how you get around town. And so we heard so much from the public that we wanted to dive in more to that, so that's what we did. So the real underlying issue is that this is not a planner-driven plan. This is a popularly driven plan, and we want it to continue to be the case. So I'm going to go through a little bit. We got thousands and thousands of comments through a variety of media. And on the face of it, it looked very kind of intimidating, trying to sort through all these things, trying to figure out what some common themes were, but we managed to do it. We managed to kind of tease out that as you really sort of listen to all the comments and look through all of them, there's some recurring themes that we saw there. A big one, obviously, was economic development. We got a lot of comments like this, that folks wanted new businesses in their neighborhood or new shops, or they wanted to attract more activity to their area. And there's a few things that you can read into this. One is that, the desire to have more things to do in their neighborhood, but also that there's a concern there that certain things have left, that there are empty storefronts, and that it's a reflection on the health or vitality of their neighborhood. And it wasn't just about existing conditions. You heard a lot of communities actually say, we feel like things are going okay now, but we're not exactly sure if we're headed in the right direction. We had folks in Hampton Cove say, we see this development happening on 431, and we're not sure if that's the way we want it to keep developing. We're not sure if that's going to be good for us long term. So there's a lot of people actually looking ahead in terms of how they were thinking. This was a very, very recurrent theme, and I'm going to show you, this is one of my favorite graphics. I show it all the time, so many of you have probably seen it before. But this is, if you see that little red square up there, that was our city boundaries in 1920 when we were basically an agrarian center of about 8,000 folks. And as we go through the decades, you'll see we grow a little bit in the early half of the century, not too much. In about 30 years, we double in population to 16,000. But I think if you've spent any time in Huntsville at all, you know what happens next. We get a little bit of more extra program on the arsenal, and the next thing you know, we grow about fourfold in the span of a decade. We double again in population in another decade, and we continue to add land area. Those are the city boundaries changing over the decades, expanding outwards. We frequently in the planning department call it the pancake batter effect, where you just sort of pour it out and it just keeps expanding because there's nothing to hold it in. We are roughly 214 square miles in area. To give you a little bit of perspective, that makes us, that ranks us in terms of cities over 100,000 in population. We are the 28th largest city in the United States of America in terms of land area. Think about how broad that actually is. We are larger in land area than peer cities like Atlanta, Seattle, Philadelphia, which is 9 times our population and is about 3/5 our land area. So we have not a lot of people and a whole lot of land area. That actually has implications for what we do with our tax money, how we take care of infrastructure, how we provide services. I think a lot of folks recognize that, and that was a recurrent concern. We really heard related to that about when you get that expansion, the things that are left behind start to suffer. And a lot of the older neighborhoods, West Huntsville, North and South Huntsville, all seeing signs of economic disinvestment that happens when you start to expand beyond the core. And there's a lot of concern. How are we going to do new things in the future to actually re-incentivize growth in our older neighborhoods? Downtown, always a point of interest. I'm not sure about the country bar, but some folks like country bars. But the idea was, let's keep adding program down there. It was definitely a point of focus. Not always going to be agreement, obviously, on what should happen downtown. The great thing is, though, if you really look at downtown and you look at the work of Downtown Huntsville Inc. and their board and Chad Emerson, you have to feel good about downtown really being on the upswing. That's an area that maybe we don't actually have to worry about so much because it's really in good shape. We can start focusing on some of the neighborhoods around it. For instance, I call these the sort of 3 squares. They were the properties that recurred most often in comments in terms of how can we, what can we do to reimagine these, or how can we get these performing again? And I think what this points out, not just in these specific sites, but that disinvestment has occurred throughout the community. It's not really just the purview of one neighborhood. It's not just the problem of one part of town. This was also, it had not so much to do, or not only things to do with commercial, it also looked at residential, folks who were concerned about the lack of diversity in housing and how we might be able to address that. Again, going back to the idea of ditto landing, we had so many people anxious to really engage the riverfront, to the point that we made that the first thing we did, and I hope many of you had the opportunity to come down to our master plan reveal last month. That was an example of how you take public input and how you take public interest and you actually generate a plan and you generate action from that. Another thing, the built environment isn't the only consideration in terms of economy. How can we do things to support small businesses? We do a really good job with industrial recruitment. We do a really good job supporting the big boys. There are probably a lot of things that we can do to actually increase improve the small business environment as well. This one, especially from the get-go, we heard about this online, in person, everywhere. Folks were really, really interested in the new infrastructure. And this, again, is another example of you spoke, we listened, because I think it was last month we got the RFI out to look for a private partner to help the city and Huntsville Utilities implement high-speed fiber in Huntsville. That is the responsiveness of a popularly driven plan. Well, it wasn't just about economic development, it was also about transportation. We heard a lot about transportation, and quite frankly, coming from Atlanta, I was very surprised at how many folks talked about transit or wanted to talk about transit or wanted to see expanded transit options, to the point where I would talk about this at home, and I would get this. This is actually a quote from my 7-year-old who is either really pulling my leg or has been watching too much Oprah, because when I started talking about trains, he kept yelling, "You get a high-speed train, and you get a high-speed train." He's very funny, but he's not always very helpful. But I think what this points out, there are a lot of challenges around implementing transit, and we'll talk more about them as we continue in this process. Foremost is, realistically the cost in implementing expanded transit, but also getting your land use to cooperate with your transit. But none of it is insurmountable, and the forum for having these discussions and for deciding what we want and how we want it is in these forums and through this plan. That wasn't the only alternative mode. We got a lot of talk about sidewalks. And when folks talked about sidewalks, it wasn't so much, we want them, it had really two big issues, continuity and connectivity. Continuity was an issue of you're walking and all of a sudden the sidewalk ends and you're not anywhere. That the sidewalks were implemented kind of piecemeal. And connectivity is that people wanted to be able to get on a sidewalk and be comfortable in a walk from point A to point B. And we know we haven't done a great job kind of implementing that network, and that's something that we can work on. Bikes, very, very similar story. How do we implement a safe and functional and connected bike network throughout the city? Streets were addressed very frequently as well. You have a lot of conflicting ideas. Some folks want to widen, some folks want to narrow. I think any time that you need to accommodate multiple modes, it is very much a challenge on how you design the roads. So we've got a lot of folks saying, maybe we need to look at how we're actually putting roads on the ground. Walking trails, not just a transportation concern, but also very much a quality of life issue, the ability to just walk comfortably from place to place. Some of that is having that connection. Some of it is just day-to-day opportunities for exercise. Greenways were another one. Of all the sort of single topics out there, greenways were probably one of the biggest and most popular and most common comments. Folks love the greenways that we have on the ground and basically just want more and want more faster. That's great for us to hear because it can help affect how we prioritize these things. And we even got a little farther afield. A lot of folks asked about public art. How can we do a little bit more to add through the arts to the character of Huntsville? Even some more specific pieces of program, places to hang out for the kids, more shopping, more things to do. I have never worked in a community. I've worked in a number of communities when I was with the private sector. I've never worked anywhere where folks have said, you know what, we've got more than enough recreation fields. We don't need any more. You can stop building ball fields and stop building parks. You rarely have the opportunity to kind of build that out full. We heard from a lot of folks who want more opportunity and places to play soccer, softball, even passive green fields. That's been a big push as well in terms of quality of life. These are very common comments frequently in any public forum, and I include these only because it may seem a little counterintuitive, but all of this is things that can be addressed in a citizen-driven plan. If you have a good master plan that supports economic development and supports job growth, a good master plan can help fight crime. It can help provide jobs and can very easily provide opportunities for greening up a city. We even got feedback on the forums like this. We were very happy that folks found events like this informative. Not everybody found them so much. We got more than a few of these. I want to put this up just because we know that this forum and sometimes these large-scale formats aren't necessarily of interest for everyone. There's some folks who really, they want to roll up their sleeves and they got a shovel and they want to go out and they want to do something right now. And there are other folks who are out there and they've got their notepad and they're filling up page after page of notes. So we know a lot of different folks in the audience, a lot of different folks who want to get engaged in a planning effort at different scales. And we know that. So we recognize that as we go into this next phase, we're going to kind of broaden the opportunities, do a little more of that small scale stuff. The person who wrote this said, I want more Play-Doh and popsicle sticks exercises. I want to be able to really dig in and be interactive. And we hear that, and we're gonna do a little bit more of that as we kind of zoom in. And then, when you ask for comments and wishes, you get all range of comments and wishes. And quite frankly, if any place could do this, I would imagine it would be Huntsville. So we took all of that. We took, literally thousands of comments in various medium and distilled it down to really 5. They really could shake out into 5 big issues: development versus redevelopment, the future of transportation, neighborhood disinvestment, quality of life investment, and economy and workforce. Talk through those real quickly. Development versus redevelopment, a lot of things at play there. This is when we talk about that balance between continuing to grow outwards versus redeveloping in the areas that we've already established. One big driver of that is infrastructure expense. Being able to serve with police and fire and water and sewer and roads, all the areas that are kind of outlying, that starts to take a toll on a community, and it leaves a lot of other areas behind. So if you can get a little bit more out of your infrastructure dollars, if you take advantage of a lot of the developed areas that you have on the ground. That leads to the ideas of gray fields and blight. When we talked about all those malls, if everyone's familiar with the term gray fields, we apply those to underperforming or vacant malls. We have a lot of those in many parts of the neighborhood. Really, many cities in this country do. We've built a lot of retail. We've built a lot of commercial square footage. Much of it is disposable architecture. You build a new shopping center down the road, this gets left behind. There's not really any design for its next life. So what do we do with it? How do we get creative about addressing that? That's a very large challenge. And a lot of it is driven by the changing market. Lakey's going to talk a little bit more about that when she comes up. But we're seeing more of a market push towards reinvesting in the core. We're seeing a desire to take advantage of development opportunities that are closer in into established areas. And that's not some sort of abstract planning philosophy. That's the market, and that's the demographics really pushing us in that direction, and the city needing to respond to that. Part of that is related to something we call placemaking. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but there is sort of inherent in that, in a lot of that growth, is a homogeneity, that a Walmart in this town looks like a Walmart in that town. And I don't have any issues with Walmart as a company or as a retail amenity, but they don't define communities. You don't say, this is my neighborhood Walmart. It's not where we all hang out. Actually, in some places it kind of is when they don't have other opportunities, but it isn't what defines a neighborhood. So we're looking for, how can we give every neighborhood within the city its own identity? Transportation is the second of the big issues, and this one is a driver. Transportation isn't just about getting around, it's also about economic development. A community that can move around well is a community that can get to its jobs, can get to its retail, and can stay vital. The challenge is, and if you've read the papers or watched television, you know that from the federal level and the state level, the transportation wallet is getting thinner and thinner every year. That means any transportation project we do, we have to double check, triple check, make sure we get every bit of efficiency out of it that we can. The Restore Our Roads effort is a huge part of that, basically being creative in terms of how we finance necessary road improvements, because we need to make sure that our network continues to function. But it's not just about expanding and widening. There are a lot of opportunities as technology is really, really changing in the transportation world, from smart signalization that allows you to really fine-tune how traffic moves through your intersections, to handheld applications that can improve the performance of public transit, or can actually help us track bike traffic so that we know and can prioritize areas where we can put more bike lanes or more bike paths in. So there are opportunities there that you can make your dollars go a little bit farther if you look at technological solutions instead of kind of our old standard of the widening and construction. And a lot of it, again, this is very much demand driven, is about transportation choice. I am not going to be the person who tells you that the car is going away and we're all going to live in bike-topia. I love to bike, but I also really like my car. It makes it very, very easy to get around. It's a great option to have. But what a lot of folks are looking for is exactly that, options. If they want to walk somewhere, are they able to comfortably walk somewhere? If they want to bike somewhere, can they do that? If they can't or don't feel comfortable driving, do they have options? And if they want to drive somewhere, are they on a safe, comfortable, efficient network? So we really want to look at how do we diversify our transportation network so that all modes work well. And transit, I frankly have been surprised about how much interest we got in transit. We've had this discussion a lot. Again, I think I've already mentioned this, that even if it doesn't happen in the next couple of years, it's something you want to start planning for now. There are a lot of challenges. It is expensive. When we talk about the federal and state transportation dollars, they're getting smaller. They're really drifting away from transit in some instances, and that's a huge challenge. So if we're going to do it, how do we do it efficiently? How do we do it in a way that actually makes sense for Huntsville? The third big issue is neighborhood disinvestment. We heard that one in almost every neighborhood we went to. When they look at shopping centers where the parking lot's always empty, or a lot of for sale signs in front of the homes, all neighborhoods experience it to some extent. It just happens as a neighborhood ages out, as the population in the neighborhood ages out, folks find a new neighborhood that's cool or interesting and they move down the road. But you can do certain things in terms of planning that help kind of mitigate the effects of those or help reverse the effects of neighborhood disinvestment. So there are a lot of strategies, and the important thing to remember is there's no magic bullet. There's no one thing that you can do to pull a neighborhood up out of disinvestment. It's really a strategy of multiple efforts at the same time. Some of it, again, is placemaking, figuring out what is it that makes a particular neighborhood unique or attractive or interesting. What is the story that neighborhood can tell, and how can we really beef that up and make it its own unique place. Another is adding housing variety. Because of the way we've developed, we're very, very heavy on single family. That was okay at the time. That was a response to the market. But one of the keys to having sustainable neighborhoods, and that is neighborhoods that don't see extended cycles of disinvestment, is that there's a variety of housing within the community that if you want to move out of a large house to a smaller one, there's an option to do that. Or if you've got kids that want to move back but aren't ready to buy, they have an opportunity to rent. Your neighborhoods become much more sustainable over the long term if you have that variety of housing in place. And another key issue is amenities, having parks, having schools, having all these things that really draw people to a neighborhood. That's very much a partnership between the community and the municipality and private entities. How do we add those things that really encourage people to reinvest in their community? And one thing, and a lot of it is a part of what we're doing now in planning and is going to be part of the future phases, is creating a shared vision. Frequently a neighborhood can have trouble getting out of disinvestment if you've got 10 different people who all think 10 different ways of fixing things, and they're all pulling in 10 different directions. A successful planning effort can actually develop a shared vision for the community, can have meetings like this at a community scale and say, all right, what are we going to do? What are the things that we want to play up? How do we actually all want to pull in one direction to see us sort of reinvested and see us kind of realize our full potential as a neighborhood? Quality of life investment was the fourth big one. A lot of folks ask, why is this important? This is important not only for us who live in Huntsville. If we are happy and we are well exercised and we are productive, a good quality of life makes for a happy population. I mean, it's that simple, but it's also a really good selling point when we're trying to attract new workers. There's an anecdote that one of my bosses, Shane Davis, talks about, is how we had an industry that was looking to come here and actually wanted to look at our capital expenditures plan. And we were like, why do you want to see that? They said, well, we want to see that you're actually investing in your parks and your sidewalks and your greenways. We want to know not just that you're making an investment in some of that basic infrastructure, but that you're investing in quality of life improvements to make sure that you're actually serving your citizens and that your citizens have all these things at their fingertips. That's a huge selling point for us, and I think it's something that we can kind of continue to add on to. We have a lot of local examples, greenways and parks. We've touched on that a bit. We have a lot of good stuff on the ground. I think there's a lot more we can actually do. We've heard it. We know it. We're looking for strategies as ways to accelerate it. Schools, I think it's no small milestone that we've managed to kind of get through that first issue with the consent order. I think there's a real opportunity now that we can move forward, that we can use schools as a selling point, because they are very much a driver for community. They're not the only one, but they are a big one, and they're very, very important to the quality of life. I also think understated are things like low mill or the arts in general, the things that you do when you're not at work or you're not at home, the opportunities that you have to be with other members of your community, and the opportunities to sort of share your civic pride. That's something that I don't think everyone necessarily appreciates, is how important it is for folks to have a level of pride in their neighborhood, and it's often very well expressed in how the community uses its public art. And I point to this all the time as an example of, our beer culture, even for those who don't like beer, is very important because it's an expression of identity. It's something that I have friends in Atlanta who call up and say, what is this monkey knot, and why is it at my favorite bar in Atlanta? That is really a part of our identity. It's a part of our creative spirit. It's a part of who this community can be, and the more we can play up things like beer and other sort of creative aspects of the community, that helps us really play up that quality of life. And lastly, economy and workforce, and Lakey's going to talk in more detail about this, but a lot of this is about, and you've seen it happening already, diversifying what we do. For a long time, obviously, we were very heavily focused on the federal installation, but now you see biotech here, you see recreation industries like Remington and Polaris coming here. We're really starting to broaden our approach to employment and workforce. Branding, everyone I think is probably familiar with the idea, that slogan, "Keep Austin Weird." That was not something that kind of came out through a broad public branding exercise. Legend has it that it was just some community advocate who called up to a radio station and said that was his goal, was to keep Austin weird. The idea is you really want to let branding come up from the people. Don't try to sort of create a brand that's not actually there. And if it happens organically like that, then it becomes more genuine and people become more interested. And at the end of the day, we want folks to come to Huntsville because this is a really, really great place to live, not just because they may have found a job here. The new infrastructure, again, going back to Gig City, the more we can press on this is a huge selling point. This is no longer one of those things that is a nice to have. This is one of those things that has become a must-have, especially among the new workforce. And finally, and this is very important, and we talk a lot, as a planner about the city of Huntsville, but we also are thinking regionally, that the successful regions, the ones that stay competitive economically, work with the other counties, work with the other cities, and think holistically about what's happening. And that sort of cooperation is really, really important in sustaining a healthy economy for the region. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lakey Boyd. She's going to walk you through a little bit more detail on the economy. There you go.
So I am going to recap a lot of information that we did really deep dives on during this process. So I'm going to keep it brief, give you the highlights. Certainly if you have any questions afterwards and you're a statistics nut, please see me. We can, sing Kumbaya together. It'll be really special. Otherwise, for everybody else, I'm going to keep it kind of short and brief and to the point. I think one of the main things to understand is that in general, across America, a lot of changes are happening. We actually had a Citizen Academy that talked a lot about these very specific changes, everything from, as a country, we're getting older, there won't be a minority by 2030, we have more single parents, we have higher debt rates, a lot of things that are impacting our population, but the big takeaway there is that it's really impacting behaviors. So it's not just about millennials or not just about baby boomers. As a Gen Xer, I always feel like those are the only groups I talk about. So I want to say there are other ones of us, but the bottom line is there's a lot of people that want a different housing type. There's a lot of people that want those quality of life pieces that Dennis talked about. So I think as Americans, we're changing, our expectations are changing, and that is really starting to impact how we live, how we shop, how we work, and how we make and move things. And that's kind of the different uses that we have, and I'll kind of touch on each one individually. I think that the big takeaways in terms of how it's impacting our community form, it has a lot to do with adaptations. It has a lot to do with differences that are being forced a lot through redevelopment, and that's what it's responding to. As we see some disinvestment, higher vacancies happening, there's a lot of opportunity in that as well. And that's where we really want to be focused in this kind of planning process, is to understand where's the opportunity in all of that and what is the direction forward that's the smart way to go. In terms of the economic base, there was a lot of information that we went through. I think that what I would highlight is the key findings. A lot of the positives, I think you know. Obviously, you're really the anchor for the regional economy. You are where the jobs are. In general, high-paying, high-wage jobs have done well with growth, had very little loss during the recession, a little bit, but in comparison to a lot of different communities, the federal government presence has a big impact. On the other side of the house, there's kind of, always a pro and con to all of those pieces. I think one of the big findings we had was that only 40% of residents actually work in Huntsville. So as you know, there's a big commuter population that comes in to work here, but then that also starts to ask the question of where are people in Huntsville working, and are all those opportunities in the city of Huntsville? So what we did find was there's actually been a loss of low-wage, mid-wage jobs, and a lot of communities would be only celebrating the high-paying growth, but I think in a lot of ways Huntsville and the Chamber has already been aware of let's be mindful of our job creation and our recruitment and how can we address those things. I think the other piece is that the federal government is kind of that double-edged. It was actually fascinating, if you're into numbers, to see how deep the impact was on wages, and 7 out of 16 sectors had an increase in their average pay due to the presence of the federal government. So that's not just the jobs on Redstone, that's actually the impact in the rest of the economy. So in some ways that just stresses the need for diversification and making sure that you're ready to ride that out if any changes do happen. From the market side, and I'll be mindful of time, I'm not going to spend a lot of time kind of on the overall trends. Like I said, we did Citizen Academy on this, so we did a really deep dive for those of you that this is where your real interest is. For most folks, I'll highlight what's in Huntsville. So a lot of changes that are happening across the country have to do with, rent is going up, rental as a proportion. Not as many people want to own. As Dennis mentioned earlier, people are moving into the core. Home values in a lot of areas have not recovered. So what does that look like in Huntsville? I think that what has been a big positive is a pretty stable residential base. I think that where we see some concerns is really around a pretty dominant single family, not a lot of housing choice if you want that. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to have a diversity of customers. Aging in place, all those kind of things really translate in residential. Another piece is going to be retail. A lot of changes there, and you see this in your community on your retail corridors. A lot of middle market retailers are closing. The purpose of a storefront with online shopping is really changing. There's a real transformation in how retail is being delivered in this country. I think that what is important to understand about Huntsville is that overall the performance is still doing pretty well. Most retailers that want to be here are here. I think that where you are in kind of the maturation process of cities is you've been a regional destination for retail and will continue to be, but there starts to be that point where, okay, I'm seeing disinvestment and high vacancies in certain areas, and it goes back to what Dennis has already touched on. The community sees it, and it's about getting ahead of that so that it is not then a drag, but instead a just constant redevelopment process, which is very normal for cities as you mature and really need to think about how your form is being delivered. I think the other piece is neighborhood commercial. You have so much corridor retail and not a lot of right next to a neighborhood, small scale, walkable, all those things, again, that Dennis touched on. As a community, you say, I don't feel like I can get from point A to point B. And what that means is really largely the form of the way retail is delivered. Office, a lot of changes there too, how people are working, where they're choosing to work, flexible, collaborative environments, square foot per worker, those kind of things are changing. What we see in Huntsville is that you have a very solid base. Obviously, with something like CRP, that is an incredible competitive asset. I think what we're seeing as a direction is similar to kind of residential and retail. You don't have a lot of what we call new format space, so kind of that anything from co-working to just having, no walls and an open format and modern space, that kind of thing. The other piece of that is making sure that CRP stays competitive going forward. The way that even research parks are functioning, it's really moving towards innovation districts and those kind of pieces of the puzzle. So I think a big takeaway overall is diversity of product is a real thing to be thinking about in Huntsville. For industrial, there's no question that everything from what's called reshoring, which is, more production happening in America, all the way to you've kind of got these real ends of the spectrum of large-scale industrial or kind of artisanal, customized production, think Etsy economy, those kind of pieces. That is becoming more and more important from a customer demand standpoint and understanding the direction that's going to go in. So for Huntsville, again, overall, I think I'd say very competitive on the industrial front. As Dennis said, a lot of wins. I work in a lot of communities that are very envious of the wins that Huntsville has had on the large scale side. I think the important thing going forward is thinking about how do you start to integrate that urban industrial, and the challenge of so many of those large-scale sites are on those further edges from Dennis's map series, and how do you connect that and make sure they're amenitized for workers and close to residents? So what does that really all come down to? There's no question that transformation is happening across the board. I think what's important to understand is that I work in communities, and particularly in the South, there's a lot of thought of, but that's not us. We're not the big city. We don't want to be. I think what's important to understand is this changing demand is important to all communities. It's really about how, as a country, we're evolving. Like I said, the behaviors are changing, our priorities are changing. Some of that is because we do have less money. Some of that is an experiential economy. Some of that is the way that work is being delivered, the digital age. So all those pieces knit together really are about what does this mean for Huntsville going forward. So we've distilled down into what we think are the core things from the market economic perspective that we want to make sure are being thought about as we pivot in this process towards actual strategies to be prepared for the future. So one of them, and I think through Dennis's comments on feedback, the community has voiced all of these. So it's always awesome when the statistics and the community are all in sync. I'm sure that's partially because there's such a strong engineer base and understanding of things. One of those pieces is the role of downtown. So historically has been kind of office, been more separated, a lot more, I'd say, success and rents and that kind of thing in CRP. But there's really, a list here just to kind of get your juices flowing of the kinds of roles that downtowns have. So everything from the gathering space to really being a destination. It could have an entertainment role. It could have mixed use. It could have office. A lot of those pieces are there, obviously. But I think a lot of the response is, and to be competitive, how are they knit together so you get a full experience? You don't go to work and then drive over to the Von Braun Center and then go to dinner. You really can have an entire experience in a single destination, ideally on foot. Another piece is there is a bit of tension, and again, that just happens as a community matures, between development on the edges of city limits and reinvestment in the core. So a lot of the commercial performance is starting to lag in the core because residential has moved out to the edges and just beyond city limits. So you really have to think about, do we want to take a stand on that? Are we concerned about that? And more importantly, are we going to incentivize having more investment in the core? Certainly from the market perspective, we think that's critically important because that's really where we're seeing consumer demand that is not age specific, that is really what people are looking for. And I want to be clear, just like Dennis said, nobody's asking you to give up a car. Nobody's saying single family subdivisions are going away. That is absolutely still a key demand segment. It's just making sure you have diversity so that there are a lot of options for a variety of people that are going to spend money in Huntsville, right? That's the key. The other piece of this is living and working. There is a kind of trend in what we call live first, work second. People are making choices about where they want to be and then finding a job, particularly those with incredibly competitive skill sets, which is a lot of the kind of jobs you have in Huntsville. So it really is about a lot of the supply that is on the ground right now in Huntsville today is not the kind of supply that is as appealing to those kind of people that are making those choices. So there are pieces that are going on the ground, think Twickenham, think Belk Lofts, those kind of things, but it's a question of, in this plan, is there a continuation of that effort going forward? Small scale, large scale, again, the community already sensed this. There's no question that the wins that have happened on the large-scale industrial have been an asset for Huntsville. We really want to make sure that small business is on the map. It's valued, it's incented, it's prioritized. It's 70% of the employment in Huntsville is less than 10 people. So I think that it's very important to understand what a key portion of the economy that is. It also is going to be a big delivery vehicle for that diversity that we want to make sure that you have in employment long term. The other piece is the neighborhood scale. Again, the community has felt this, they've expressed it. Because Huntsville had such a growth spurt and continued growth after the invention of the car, there aren't a lot of historic nodes to return to and redevelop. You're really going to be doing this from scratch. So in some ways that's a real opportunity. In others it's going to be a change in pattern, and having those nodes, it addresses everything, like Dennis was saying, from transportation to aging in place to making sure your retail stays more competitive than kind of the leapfrog shopping center game can often deliver to a community. I think those are the pieces that from the market perspective we see as critically important moving forward. These are the questions that we're putting out that we are going to be talking about as we're developing recommendations and strategies and actions. So on that note, Dennis is going to come back up and talk more about what our next steps for the process are going to be.
So you hear all that. You hear what are the issues, what are the things we're facing. We've really got a great sense of that. What's next? There's a number of things that we kind of want to work our way through that I'm going to talk about. First is the website and report. For those of you who've gone to it in the past, it's really just kind of an information place, and it's a place to access Imagine Huntsville and have kind of a comment board. What we would really like to see it shift to over time is really an online reporting format, that the comp plan isn't actually this giant binder that sits on someone's desk and collects dust, that actually all the projects, all the initiatives, all the comments, everything is online, so that as it gets completed or as it changes or as there are edits, you can track them from wherever you are. It becomes much more accessible, much more transparent. So we'd like to see, we're going to start moving the website to function really as an online document. I hope you've all been here. This website has served us really, really well, but now is time for us to kind of move into its second generation. I think the reports that we talked about, a lot of the data for those who want to see a little bit more info on what we talked about here tonight, this month, we're going to start posting sections, a couple sections at a time, online on the Big Picture website, and we'll send out a notice when we do our every other week email, but that'll give you an opportunity to kind of look at it and really kind of get used to test driving the website as the portal for all things Big Picture. From engagement, we're going to start changing how we engage. Some of you might really enjoy these. Some of you, as you could tell by the comments, find the large-scale meetings a little less entertaining. We're going to start, because it's really the logical next step, zooming in, getting a little closer in terms of how we conduct meetings. Start talking about some of the smaller character areas. Start talking about the neighborhoods. so that it becomes a little less about the large policy things and a little bit more about the specific neighborhood issues, because we are a city of neighborhoods. Every neighborhood has its own sort of unique concerns. North Parkway is very different from South Parkway, is very different from 431, is very different from West Huntsville. Now is the time where in this next step we can kind of start looking at the issues that are very specific to those areas. We really want to start developing principles and vision. This is going to guide us. Now that we know what our issues are, what are the sort of big ideas that are going to guide us? And there's kind of a double-edged sword here. There's some folks who are really going to want to get into the action part. Some folks want to continue to talk about the big things. This would be, for example, we say, all right, in order to guide our decision making in the future, a principle might be, a goal is to make Huntsville a recreation destination for the Southeast. That would be the example of a principle that could then inform some of our decisions going forward. And it can also help us shape some of the vision on those smaller area levels where we can decide what those individual neighborhoods want to look like. These are kind of how we've broken up the sub areas. You'll note they don't follow school boundaries, they don't follow council districts. They're really about areas that share characteristics. We're going to start looking at each of these areas in turn and how each one of these needs to have specific issues addressed. And don't worry, you don't have to copy this down. It's obviously on the website, and you're going to see it a lot more going forward. At the same time, we do kind of the sort of broad scope stuff. We know a lot of folks are very interested in the principles. A lot of folks are sitting there going, what can I do right now? I want to get going. There's a project I have in mind, and I want to make it happen. So how do we address those issues? What are the actual strategies we can do? For example, if we had a strategy related to that principle on establishing recreation, a strategy might be more aggressive in implementing our greenways. We know that's a great amenity that we can build upon. That's a strategy. And then from that, you can say, what are the steps we're going to take? A step from that might be find a private or a nonprofit partner to help us advocate and plan for those greenways. So you get to see that kind of progression between what your big philosophy is and what your action items are. And I know sometimes that kind of sounds a little tedious. It sounds sort of over-planned. But what it does is anyone who's kind of new to the game can look at it and say, I know exactly how you got to this point because I see the community's thought process. I can see how they got to wanting to do these things. It provides a little bit of a history and it provides some context to it. And then again, we want to swap the plan to really be a web-based document. We feel like this is a much more transparent and accessible product. You think about it, everything's being driven by websites nowadays. You do more shopping online, you interact with your government online, you interact with your community online. It's not to say we won't continue to do a lot of in-person work, but we really want to drive the plan towards being a web-based document. This is an example from another community called Direction 2030, where you can go on and see how certain areas have been updated, see what the master plans are for those areas, see what the land use and the transportation projects look like, and really kind of keep track of what's going on. One of the things that it does is it provides, as we really develop a list of all the things we want to do, it provides that comprehensive listing on there, gives you an update of where it stands, who's responsible for it, what the timeline is on it, what sort of issues it addresses. There are examples in many, many comp plans that talk about how you can break down whether or not you're doing these sort of policy initiatives or construction initiatives. It makes it much easier for you to track those, and if there are things you're interested in, like greenways, you can more easily track the progress of those. We really think this is kind of the halfway point in terms of a timeline. We think in spring 2016, meet one last time in kind of a big format and trot out what we think this is going to look like. That won't be the end of planning. Some of you are probably like, yay, some of you are like, ugh. But this should be an ongoing process. This should be a dialogue. The city is going to continue to change. One of the opportunities of having that plan is we can continue to tweak it as the market changes or as things get built or as projects get completed. It becomes an ongoing dialogue, but at least we have a starting point to work off of. Before you go, and hopefully close to the end of talking, we've got a couple exercises we'd like you to do for us out in the lobby to really kind of get you thinking about some of the things that we're going to be talking about going forward. We've got kind of a revised issues matrix based on a lot of our input that we just want you to kind of help us say, all right, of all these things that we think are issues or concerns or considerations in the community, these are the ones that that stick with me most. Another one is doing a principles exercise. You know, what is kind of a big, if you could think, the Huntsville of 20 years from now should be ... What do you think it should be? What is it? What is one of the guiding principles that you would like to see this plan follow? And then for those who are like, yeah, principles, I want to do something. We also have a little bit of a money exercise where we've got a number of kind of action items that folks have given us over time that we've laid out on a board that, you know, we got a little bit of, it's not real money, it's fake money, that you can vote with. You know, put your money where your projects are. Say, if I had a certain city budget, this is where I would spend it. If you've got another thing that you think, I don't like any of these, I'd really rather spend it on this, we got a spot where you can put that up as well. This is really a start of that dialogue. What are the things, what are the concrete things that we can do, that we can put in this plan that you want to see to help us realize that vision? Before we get into Q&A, I will say Lakey and I and the other members of staff will stay here to answer questions. We are almost always the last folks to leave these meetings. You can come on up afterwards, but there are a few thanks that I need to give. One is to the folks I work with at the city, especially the department heads, the mayor. In my private sector world, I got to work with a lot of different communities, a lot of them. They all function on various sort of levels of efficiency. This is one of the best communities I've ever worked with in terms of its leadership because there is a commitment to serving the city and to seeing this city excel across every department and with everyone I've dealt with. It has been an absolute pleasure, and it's made my work in planning a whole lot easier. The second group is my planning department specific, and they've all run out, so they can't hear me compliment them. What I did in the private sector and brought into our planning department, many of them had never had a chance to do or done. I was asking them to do very, very different things this past year. They hit it like a champ. I hope you guys see that, and I hope you appreciate it. I think I have one of the best departments I've ever worked with. And lastly, I really have to say that this has been one of the best communities I've ever worked with in all my years of doing planning efforts. I think the level of engagement, the level of positive approach to what we want to do, the level of commitment, being constructive and respectful. We have never gone out to a community organization and had them go, you know what, I don't care about planning, or it's never going to happen. There's been no apathy. People have been engaged, they've been active, they've been excited to plan. That is a huge, huge plus for a planner, and it's really been, just for this past year, a real honor to work with the City of Huntsville, and I'm looking forward to the next 20 years. I hope you are too, because this is just really the first step in what I think is going to be a great process. With that, good night. Please go up, take advantage of the exercises outside, or if you've got questions, please come on up and ask them of Lakey and myself.